Well, this has been an adventure just being together in groups. So great for us as a church to connect in this way. And I hope you're finding great joy in this. And I hope you're finding great connection. And I hope you're opening up a little bit with each other and really caring for each other and praying for each other. And you're spending time looking at scripture together. You know, we've been looking at what it means to be a family that's on an adventure, that's on mission. And how do we do that as a church? And we've looked at the values that keep us on track. And last week we talked about big dreams, that we would have God-sized dreams. And this week I want us to kind of put some of those pieces together, to take the values that we talked about and the big dreams and really kind of boil that down and combine it and look at what's really our purpose. What's the purpose that you're living out? And not just you, but what's the purpose that you're living out for your family for the next 50 years? It's like a generational purpose that can guide you. You know, as Presbyterians, we have some of these creeds and catechisms, and there's a famous one that starts with a question that says, what is the chief end of man? Like, what's the first purpose that we're supposed to live out? And the answer, kids learn this, is the answer is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That's really what we should be about, is basking in our, that we're created by God and we glorify that. And then we enjoy living in the way that God created us to live and run. And there's great joy there. And that's where our church kind of takes that phrase, causing God great joy. And we really live that out as a church. That's a really important one to us, that we're a people full of joy, because that's part of our purpose. But when somebody asks you, what do you do? You probably have some answer, but it goes to maybe work or where you volunteer, somewhere where you spend your time. You know, what do you do, Kaz? I say I'm a pastor. That kills all conversation right there. But you probably have some kind of answer to that. But I want you to ask that in a bigger way. Like what does your family do? You know, as a church, we answer it this way. We say we do three things as a church. We reach those who are far from God and try to invite them into a life with Christ. We build up the believers, and we do that in discipleship and our connection with each other. And then the third thing that we do is we equip everyone to use the gifts that God has given them in ministry. That everybody is part of ministry, and we want to equip everybody to be part of that. You know, that comes from kind of the mission statement for all churches. That's from Matthew 28. It's called the Great Commission. It says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded. And so it says baptize, so that's where we reach those who are far from God. We know we want to introduce people to a life with Jesus. That's the baptizing part. And then we want to teach people to obey all I have commanded. That's the discipleship part. That's what we do. We build people up. But that last part is, you know, we're commanded to go, and all of us are commanded to do that. And that's why we say we want to equip everybody to figure out what their ministry is, everybody to figure out the gifts that God's given them and put it to use, that the faith is something that we actually live out, and this mission is something that we're all together on. And so that gives us a guide. That's our guiding mission. It's our direction, and we know which way we're running. It kind of keeps us on course. And we see this with corporations too. You know, corporations always have like some kind of mission statement or vision statement, and different groups call it different things, but they might have this big statement because corporations actually know it's real easy to get off track. Like it's easy to get sidetracked because there's a good opportunity, there's a good potential there, and run in that direction. And then there's a problem that comes up, and they put all the resources on that problem, and over time corporations just totally get lost. Or there's a sense of attrition over time. As corporations move on and leadership changes, if they don't have a strong guiding principle, well, it just kind of fizzles, and they lose their way. And so corporations see it, and they see it clearly, and so they say, we're going to put a statement, a purpose statement in place. And so we've seen it. You're familiar with it. Maybe you roll your eyes when you hear about it because you've sat in so many meetings about it. But I want you to think about it this week in a new way. Like what if your family had this sense of purpose? Not just for you, but a sense of purpose that you said, this is what our family really is about. And that you tried to set that up for generations. Like you tried to build that purpose in and you tried to establish that purpose, that you invested in the values that would help live that purpose out. And I know your family may be in a different place, in a different phase, and you're probably not right at the beginning of your story as a family, but that's okay, wherever you are. What might the purpose look like? If you were to set a purpose statement, not, for yourself, but also even beyond yourself, that said, this is how our family is going to live into the future. I think about the story of King David. He becomes king over Israel, and we read about that story in 2 Samuel. And in 2 Samuel 7, that's when he finally really takes the throne over Israel. And now his family is established as the king, and it's going to be that way for generations. And in 2 Samuel 7, he has the statement where he's talking to God, and he says, "Who am I, and what is my family that you have brought me this far?" And then as he's praying to God, he kind of lays out his purpose and how he's going to rule. And he does it with this sense that God's in charge and God's guiding him. And if we really had to lay out a mission statement for the life of David, there'd be this mission statement that he's to lead the people of Israel with unwavering devotion to God. And see, that'd be a great mission statement for David, King David, and his family. And there's kind of two parts to that. One is the administration part, right? They're going to lead. And that's part of his job, is to lead a group of people. But he's going to do it under the authority of God and in a way pointing people to God. So to lead the people of Israel with unwavering devotion to God. And you see that kind of in the words of David, but it gets lost. And those two parts kind of get separated. And what you see if you read about David's life is that sometimes he loses track of that connection with God and that devotion to God. Now he comes back around, but that purpose, that sense of purpose, it doesn't get passed down. And by the time you get to his son Solomon holds on to the part of leading Israel. In fact, that becomes really important to him, being the king and the power of the king, and what it looks like to be a powerful leader of a nation within their region. See, that becomes important to Solomon, and he really works to build that up. But he sort of loses the side of this that says, with an unwavering devotion to God. And as that starts to drift in Solomon, then we go one generation further, and we have Rehoboam. And by the time we get to Rehoboam, things really fall apart. He's Solomon's son, and all of a sudden the kingdom ends up being divided into two different groups. There's a rival king over here, and there's all kinds of tension and quarreling and fighting. And Rehoboam really abandons worship of the one true God, and the scripture tells us that in his time, they set up these stacks of stones that were worshipped to other gods, kind of like altars. And they put up these Asherah poles. It was pagan worship to other gods. It was idolatry. And it was a split kingdom, and it was quarreling, and it was fighting. And I just think about that story because David had a courageous and passionate faith. And he messed up a bunch, but he would turn back to God. But somehow, the mission of who they were to be as a family and the purpose of that got lost. And just 2 generations later, it's utterly lost. Now, there's some good news here, right? The story of Jesus coming into the world, he's in the line of David. Like, God still works through that line, and God redeems them. And so there's hope. There's hope for redemption and restoration and renewal. There's good news, but I just think, what if David had set out that clear purpose? What if he had spelled it out that clearly? And then he taught his children and his children's children. What if that had been the thing that really guided him and he invested to make that happen for generations? And I wonder about that for my family and for yours. Wasn't that many years ago that my wife and I moved from Michigan to Texas with 2 little kids, and we planted a church. And we had this strong call of God to do it, but it was a risky thing. And because when you plant a church, you don't know if it's going to make it. You don't know if you're going to have a salary. You just don't know how that adventure is going to go. It feels like faith is all in, but not just for me as the professional pastor, but really for my wife and my children. And over the years, we added a couple more kids into that journey, but the call was clear. If you ask anybody in my family, who are you guys? What do you guys do? They would have just real fast said, we're church planters. That's what we do. Our whole purpose was around that. We were going to build a church and lead people towards Jesus. We're going to lead people to know and love and walk in the way of Jesus. And we're going to do that as a family. And it was all in thing. And my kids knew how to set up chairs and set up sound systems, because that's what church planters do, you know. And the whole family would pass out flyers and do marketing to invite people to church, because that's, you know, what church plant families do. And we just kind of had that real sense. It was sort of a rallying cry for us. We talked about it all the time. And when things came up, decisions we had to make, we would be able just to clearly point this out and say, well, we're a church planting family, you know? So this is what church planting families do. And sometimes that was even sacrifice. Like, we wanted to go on some great vacation, but we didn't have the funds to do that. And so my kids would talk about it, and we would look at each other and say, that would be awesome, but we're a church planting family. And so we knew we could say no to things because we knew what our mission was about. And we got to be real excited about being a church planting family. Like, it was an exciting thing to be a part of. And so that purpose, that guided us. And not just for Cammie and I, but for our own children. And I even see that time that we had in our family's life that's impacting my older kids. I can see that in them even now as they make choices about their life. Like, they got that identity. But I was thinking about it for this week because I started asking this question as I was preparing. What does that mission statement look like for my family now? And we've changed a little bit. We're not a church planting family anymore. We're still a pastor family. We get to be a part of the Advent family, and it's really, really exciting. But I recognize I actually have some work to do to clarify this. Because as excited as I am and Cammie are, we're excited together to be a part of this adventure as part of the Advent family. I want to make sure that this is clear for my kids. That it's the kind of a purpose and mission that we can talk about as a family that's not just a one-time thing or just for a few years, but something that's generational, that goes on. So that 2 generations from now, I don't have to look down and go, oh, it just all fell apart. But instead, we can say, man, we put something into place, and we invested in this, and we did this together so that 50 years from now, some of the dreams that God gave us will come to fruition, so that we'll see impact generation after generation. And I love the opportunity to do this. So Cammie and I, in our small group this week, are going to be working on this just like you are. We're going to write out our purpose for ourselves as a family. And we're doing this as a church too. It's a really cool time as a church. You know, we're getting to say, okay, church, we don't want to get adrift. We've got to be on mission. We're going to reach people that are far from God, the ones that are here in our neighborhood. And we're going to point them to Jesus and invite them on this story. We're going to build people up, and we're going to equip everybody to be a part of ministry. And so that's why we're doing this adventure together. That's why we're doing the whole campaign and talking about all the vision and putting together these projects, because we believe that this is guided by our mission. It's going to get us on mission. And so it's an exciting time as a church to dream about this and to say, hey, what ways are we going to invest? And we're going to be all in together to push this mission forward because this is about staying on the purpose that God's given us. And so it's an exciting time as a church, but I want it to be an exciting time for your family. I want you to really pray about this and think about it and dream about it. I want you to talk with each other about it and pray for each other and pray for each other's families. What does your purpose look like? How do you invest in that now at the beginning of this adventure that God's taking you on, so that from generation to generation, it has an impact 50 years down the road? I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for me. I'm excited for us.